Yoga teachers, if you feel awkward teaching on camera, then you're not alone. There's a few reasons why, and I want to show you how to fix it. The first reason being, it's likely you weren't taught how to teach on camera. You were taught to teach a room full of people, and the experience is very different. When you teach to a room full of people, you get instant feedback, so you can see from people's facial expressions, from the subtle signals that they give, whether they understand you and whether they're with you, or whether you've lost them. But when you teach online, you don't have that. You just have this lens or this screen that you're talking to, and it's a very different experience. So if you've ever started trying to film and then thought, I'm horrible at this, you're not, you were just never trained for it. The second reason being, the way you speak on camera is very different to the way you speak in person. Because in person, you can be a little bit more personal. People know you, so you know what are the things that they understand, what are the things that you can say, what kind of jokes can you crack if that's your style. You know what's going to land with them. But online, you don't always know your audience. Like, I teach to millions of people and I don't know them all, so I'm constantly assuming what I'm going to say and how that delivery might be taken, whether that's going to land with people, whether it isn't. So there's a lot more anticipation involved in teaching online versus teaching in person. And the last reason being, you probably haven't given yourself enough time to get comfortable with this. A lot of people approach teaching online as if it's going to be the same as teaching in person. They hit record, sit down, and then their mind goes blank and they start to feel super self-conscious and they have all of this negative self-talk going on. Like, I'm horrible at this, I don't know what to say, my words aren't coming out the way I want them to, why isn't this as easy as I thought it was going to be? This is the most common problem I see yoga teachers making because they assume it's going to be the same as teaching in person, but it's not. It's completely different. Teaching in person, that's something that you've likely practiced at for a little while and you start to get comfortable with it. But if you haven't practiced teaching to a camera, then it's likely that you're not going to be a natural straight away. If you go back and look at some of my earlier videos, you will see just how awkward and how clearly self-conscious I was on camera.
Hello guys, welcome to class.
Versus today when I'm pretty comfortable. I'm talking to the camera just like it's a friend, just like it's someone sitting across from me.
Hello and welcome to this gentle full body stretch, perfect for anyone who is new to yoga.
This is not something that is a natural ability, it is a trained ability. So that means you can learn to get good at it, which is great, but you can't learn to get good at it if you don't get started. Like, this is the most important thing. So today, start practicing teaching. You don't have to put the pressure on yourself by saying, I'm going to publish this, the world never needs to see it. But it's important that you get used to sitting down and going through some sequences. It doesn't mean that you have to do a full class, but just getting used to talking to camera, getting used to introducing a class when there's no one there. And I'm going to walk you through a framework you can follow to make that a little bit easier. But just going through the motions as if you are actually going to publish this class will give you the practice hours that you need to feel more confident on camera. Now, a moment ago, I mentioned about an introduction framework. So I think, and you've probably experienced this, when you hit record, the most daunting thing is getting started. It's what are those first few things that I need to say? And your mind goes blank. So this is why I find having a framework really helps. Now, when you're teaching in person, you would introduce a class and, it's quite conversational. Hello and welcome everybody. Today we're going to do this, this, and this. Teaching online, it's slightly different. Because again, you don't know the people that you're going to be teaching to, so you have to make a couple of assumptions. The best way I find to do an intro is to basically set people's expectations by assuming what they might need to know. So for example, if someone has clicked on a morning yoga class, they're expecting to see a morning yoga class. So the first thing I would do in my introduction is say, hello and welcome to this morning yoga flow. So instantly they know they're in the right place. I've paid off the title and they're starting to feel at ease. Then the next few things I would be thinking about is how else can I set that expectation so that they know what they're going to get from this class. The same way you would set people up in a in-person class to say, this is what you're going to need, this is what we're going to be focusing on. It's the same online. So after I've paid off the title, I will then go in to let people know whether this is an all levels class or whether it's for a specific level. I'll let them know if there's a certain area of the body we're going to be focusing on, and there's an important caveat for this in a moment. And then I'll let them know if they need any props or anything like that that might help them feel more prepared for the practice.
Hello and welcome to this gentle yoga practice. This is a full body practice for mixed levels, which means that there will be options to make some of the more challenging poses more accessible. And I do recommend having a cushion or something to support you throughout this class, as you'll want something to lean into from time to time.
Now, I keep talking about how online you need to assume what people might need to hear. So for example, if you've got a title that has the word core or power or maybe like strong in it, people online make different associations with words. When someone reads core, one person might think, oh, that sounds really fun. Another person might think, oh, that sounds really daunting. So when it comes to online in your introductions, you've got to think what connotations might be associated with that word. How might that title have made somebody feel, and how can I reassure them? So for example, if it is like a core, power, flow, it might even be good to address this in the introduction to say, if you felt like that title was a little bit intimidating, if you're worried by the word core or power, don't worry, we're going to be moving intentionally. There's going to be plenty of options so that you can modify. This just instantly sets people at ease. One of the best people who does this is Yoga with Adriene. When I studied some of her intros and some of her classes, she does this wonderfully. Whenever there's something that might be potentially challenging, where it might lose retention and people might click away, she says something to encourage people, to set them at ease. So I would recommend thinking about how you can do that. Thinking about what people might need to hear before they know they even need to hear it. Then, with your intro framework, you can pretty much rinse and repeat this process, adding in like a sprinkling of your personality and some variety. But I find if you stick to that framework, every time you hit record, it doesn't feel so scary and your mind doesn't go blank. But then when we get into the class, as I keep saying, we have to keep thinking about anticipating what people need to hear. And you don't know who's coming to your online classes if they're on YouTube like this. People from around the world will be practicing with you. So there's a couple different things you need to consider. The first one is the simplicity of your language. I think a lot of teachers go wrong by picking up flowery language. They pick up language that sounds really decorative and beautiful, but it just doesn't mean anything to the majority of people. That doesn't make any sense. So it's redundant. And when you're teaching online, people might not all be native English speakers. So if it's not their first language and then you're using language that's just really convoluted, then it's not helpful and people are going to click away. And if your aim is to build a community and to grow teaching online, then you've got to think about how you can create the easiest experience for your students. So this is why I would recommend learning to simplify your language. If you struggle with this, this is what I created the Art of Communication for, but more on that later. So, as I keep mentioning about assumptions that you need to make, if it is an all levels class, you have to assume that people will be expecting a variety of modifications, a variety of options in that class, so that it truly does cater to beginners, intermediates, and advanced. Now, the way you deliver this is really important because your language matters. If you are delivering options in this hierarchy of this is better, this is worse, then your language will take people away from the experience of their practice and put them into a place of comparison. They all of a sudden start critiquing their practice. They start judging themselves for not being able to do that thing, or they start feeling less than for not being able to do that thing. So if you are teaching an all levels class, it's very important to present these modifications or these variations as being on an equal plane. So one of the best ways I've found to do this is to simply say option 2 or option 2. So for example, if I'm teaching different variations of high lunge, it might be option 2, lower the back knee to steady you. Option 2, lift the front heel to challenge your balance. There are 2 different options offering 2 different experiences. Neither is presented as being better or worse than the other, but what this does is it gives your student opportunity to make the practice their own, because you're not in the room with them to go over to them and say, hey, this might be a good option for you. So instead, you've got to anticipate what those options are that people might need. And this is the difficulty of teaching all levels classes. It's a lot easier when you know that you're just speaking to beginners, you're just speaking to intermediate. But what I found is that the all levels classes are the ones that actually always perform best. I don't know why that is. I think it's because intermediate can be quite off-putting to people. As I mentioned before, intermediate comes with this connotation of it being too difficult for a lot of people, even though most beginners can attempt a lot of intermediate things. They just think that they can't. So this is why I find the all levels classes are a great way to help people develop, because people will try things when you present it to them in this way where everything is equal. There's just another option to try out if you feel like it today. With that being said, in order to know what options you're going to give, this is where some forethought and some preparation comes in. So when you're teaching online, I find more than ever, you really have to think ahead. I keep banging on about anticipating what people need to hear, but you really do. And you're not going to have to do this every single class, but after you've done this a few times, you'll start to know, these are the options that work for high lunge. These are the options that I can deliver for like upward facing dog, or, whatever pose it is, you'll start to build this bank of options that you can offer people. You're likely already doing this in your in-person classes. You just may have not thought about it in this way for your online classes. Now, when it comes to speaking in a different way online, it's not just about the way you speak in classes, it's also about the way you speak on social media, because the way you speak in a class is a very different way of presenting than how you would present in a tutorial, for example, on social media, like on Instagram. One of the mistakes I see a lot of yoga teachers making is they have what is called like yoga voice. So they talk in this very long, drawn out, fluid way that for many people can be really, really annoying. And a lot of people, when they see that, they're just like, get to the point. What works on social media now in 2026 is when people speak to you like they're just chatting to another person. It's normal. It feels like very relaxed, not like this performative style of speech. And it just feels a lot more real and relatable. So this is why if you are trying to approach creating tutorials, do it as if you are speaking as bluntly as possible. This is an exercise that I had to do many, many years ago because I had to get myself out of this habit of yoga speak. I had to get rid of the yoga voice and just learn to speak to people normally. And it almost felt like I was being a bit rude and a bit rushed. But what I later realized is actually that slowly started to feel more normal. And now it's just like my presentation style. So when it comes to teaching tutorials, things like that, you've really got to think about having a different persona to the persona that you have when you're teaching classes. Because in a class, you do have more time. People will probably be thankful for having the extra time, the additional pauses in between cues, because it gives them chance to interpret what you're asking them to do and to feel it in their own body. But when it comes to social media, people just want that information delivered in a simple, direct, and time-efficient way. So if you're taking ages to get to the point, if you're using this super long, drawn-out yoga voice, people are just going to get annoyed and they're just going to swipe away. So this is a really important habit to notice, to observe if you have, and then try and train yourself out of that. Now, all of these struggles and all of these fixes are why the art of communication exists. Because it's likely when you did your yoga teacher training, you didn't realize what a big impact communication was going to play in the way you teach. Because yoga teacher trainings tend to emphasize all of the other areas of teaching, which are equally as important. But the thing that you use most is actually the way you speak, It is the way you show up. It is the way you guide people with your voice. It is the way you present to camera or to a room of people. It is the things you say that make people feel at ease. It is the things you say that make people feel included. But without training that, it doesn't come naturally to a lot of us. It didn't to me. It took me years and years of honing this skill. This is why I created the art of communication. It breaks down not just how to cue clearly so your students can actually enjoy the class and they're not just wading through all of these confusing cues, but it also teaches you how to present to camera, how you need to approach social media differently to teaching a class, how to work on your introduction framework so that you feel confident every single time you hit record. And I also share years of experience because it's likely if you were a new teacher, you haven't had those experiences that other teachers have had to learn the hard way. So through the course, I share the years of experience that I have so that you can shortcut that a little bit. So if this sounds like something that you need, I would love for you to come and join the Art of Communication. I've left the link in the description down below.